Hello and welcome to It's All About You, the best show about you on the internet. I am B. Dave Walters, life strategist and spiritual coach. This is episode number 29, Personality. Now, I mentioned before in the last episode, and if you've been on my Facebook fan page, that I am writing my new book, and I am asking everybody to send me some information about yourself. And if you like, I'll mention you by name in the book. And the things I'm asking for are: what is your birth date, time, and location? And what personality type are you? And I give a list on my fan page. So I want to explain a little bit now about these personality types, both so that you can have an idea, so that you can message me your answer, either through Facebook, MySpace, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you want to do it, and just so that you can kind of have a little better insight into yourself and how you think, and more importantly, how other people think, so you can communicate with them. Does that make sense? Because have you ever been talking to somebody, and it seemed like you all were just speaking two different languages? Like, you say something like, I'm hungry, and they say, I don't want a hot dog. You're like, what? Because I've mentioned in the past that whenever we communicate, everybody goes through a process in which they delete, distort, and generalize the message. Like, let's say, for instance, let's say you watched some of my other videos, read some of my other articles, and you like me in advance. And so the words that you're hearing are coming through a filter of somebody that you like and trust and listen to. But let's say for whatever reason you don't like me. Maybe you're one of the people who's skeptical of coaches or anybody that writes books or positive thinking stuff. So you might be looking at me instead like... And so everything I say, you'll dismiss instantly. You'll say things like, oh, well, that's just common sense, blah, blah, blah. By the way, common sense is a very uncommon thing. So what I'm doing here is, yes, helping me so that you can send me the information, and helping you so that you will understand you and the people around you better. Does that make sense? So just to make sure that I get this all right, I got a list that I'm going to read from here, and I'm just going to fill in a little bit of the gaps. There's 4 personality types: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and auditory digital. There's 100 personality type systems out there. And by the way, my book is I'm putting together another way of looking at personalities and why we do what we do and how we think. So, you might like Myers-Briggs. This is based on NLP. I'm doing a new one. There's 100 different ways to map territory. It's like saying, what's the right way to do art? Well, there's lots of ways, and it's all expressive, okay? So, everybody has all of these traits inside of them. Everybody does. But you are going to be more predominantly weighted towards one or the other. Does that make sense? So I'm asking which one is the best description of you, but also you can look at other people and see what's the best description of them. Does that make sense? Okay. First type of people are visual. Let me just read off my list here. By the way, this is a list that I got off of renewal.ca. Don't want to breach any copyrights there. I know these things in my brain, but it's very well laid out from renewal.ca. Plug for renewal.ca. Okay, visual people with a visual preference will tend to be organized, neat, and well-groomed. Why? Because they want to look good. And what do they expect from you? Yes, the same thing. They use visualization for memory and decision-making, often getting insights about something. They tend to be more imaginative and may have difficulty putting ideas into words. They speak faster than the general population. Why? Because they have a picture in their mind. And if it's a moving picture, there's a lot to tell in so little time. They prefer in-person interactions to see the other person and his or her reactions. They want to see or be shown concept ideas or how something is done. They want to see the big picture. They may not remember what people have said and become confused if you give them too many verbal instructions. However, if you draw a map or a picture for them, then they can see what you're saying. They remember faces more easily than names, and they can be distracted by visual activity much less so than noise. And by the way, you may think this is me, but actually that's not me. A visual person will say things like, I see what you're saying. They'll use words like, it seems kind of hazy. That's a very short-sighted thing for you to say. Take a peek at this. Can you paint a picture for me? Things like that. They will use visual words, okay? So if you're one of the other personality types, especially kinesthetic, which we'll see when we get there, where you tend to speak slowly and a little more pensively, and somebody else is like blah, 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 like a machine gun, it might be hard for you two to kind of bridge that gap. But I'm going to tell you how to bridge the gap after I explain the personality types. In fact, in the interest of time, I'm going to go through these a little faster. The second type of personality is auditory. People with an auditory tonal preference, personality type, will tend to be more aware of subtle changes in tone of your voice and be more responsive to certain tones of voice. They will perceive and represent sequences and are able to remember directions and instructions easily. They learn by listening and asking questions. They enjoy discussions and prefer to communicate through spoken language rather than the written word. They talk through problems and like to have someone available to serve as a sounding board for their ideas. They need to be heard, and they can be easily distracted by noise. Another thing auditory people do is sometimes when you're talking to them, they will turn their head actually and, be listening to you. So you might be like, look at me, like Foghorn Leghorn, look at me. You're not looking at me, boy. But they process information better by turning their ear towards it. Anybody who's really into music is probably auditory as well. And auditory people will say things like, I hear you, listen, I don't know, as quiet as a mouse, I voiced an opinion. When they talk, they will use sound-based words. Now that you're paying attention for this, you'll hear it. Like, when you wonder how one of the ways I can understand people so quickly, this is one of the ways. Just the words you choose. If you tell me, I see what you're saying, I hear what you're saying, I feel you, or that makes sense, any of those responses have just told me quite a bit about you. So, once you're aware of this, you'll start hearing it in other people. Kinesthetic. People with a kinesthetic preference will tend to speak slower than the general population. Why? Because they need time to get in touch with how they feel about the topic. They tend to be more sensitive to their bodies and their feelings and respond to physical rewards and touching. They learn by doing, moving, and touching. They dress or groom themselves more for comfort than how they look. They make decisions based on their feelings, and they stand closer to other people than those with a visual preference to feel the other person's energy, whereas the person with the visual preference will stand back to see more of the other person in terms of their body language and etc. Kinesthetic will use words like, I need to get a feel for it. I grasp what you're saying. I'm trying to catch on. We had a heated argument. You're sharp as a tack. You got to lay a firm foundation. Again, they will use feeling-based words. Like I knew a kinesthetic guy that would always say, I need to get my arms around it. I need to get my arms around what you're saying. It's a physical motion. You understand? So, again, that's a big clue to who's a kinesthetic. And finally, auditory digital. A digital is devoid of the senses. People with the auditory digital preference or personality will tend to have a need to make sense of the world, to figure things out and to understand. They talk to themselves and carry on conversations with you in their mind. Often they will say they remember discussing something with you when actually they did not have the conversation. They did, however, in their mind. They learn by working things out in their mind. They're not to be spontaneous as they like to think things through. They have logic play a key role in the decision process, as do facts and figures. And they memorize the steps through procedures and sequences. And an auditory digital person will say things like, get a sense for it, or I understand what you're saying, or that doesn't make sense to me, or I know, I think, it's a process, motivate, consider. Can you describe it in detail for me? What exactly do you mean? Pay attention. So, that one is me. I'm auditory digital. Auditory, like I said, everybody's got all four of these. Auditory digital tends to be the most balanced of the three, in the sense that so much so some people don't even agree that auditory digital really is one, but I do because I'm it. But remember, there's no bad one. There's no right or wrong on this list. How you communicate and how you process the world is fine. You just want to be able to get a handle on how it is that you process information so that you can send it to me along with your birth date, time, and location. But also so that you can frame information to be able to communicate better with others and have them communicate with you. So I'm going to split this for my brothers and sisters on YouTube. For everybody else, stay with me. We'll be right back.